Hello and welcome to the Bluff Creek Project Podcast. I'm Tate Hieronymus and I am your host. And I am joined with me, the most apathetic guest I've ever had. No, I'm just kidding. He's a cool dude. Raymond Ray. Raymond, what's up, my man?
Hold on, I can't talk right now. I'm being apathetic. What's up, Tate? Thanks for having me on.
I knew this would happen. Dang it.
What would happen? You started it. I was just sitting here minding my own business.
I guess I'm the instigator, am I?
Just a little.
So, what's new in the world of Raymond?
Not much. Did a move and living in Riverside County now, the Inland Empire, Southern California. Still working and went through some family stuff here the last couple of months, and it kind of pulled me away from anything other than work. So I haven't been very active on the Bigfoot front. But looking back to getting back to things, getting caught up what's happened in the last couple of months, and any new sightings, any new anything that's been coming down the pipe, taking a look at it and seeing what's going on with it.
Staying busy now. I mean, I think because we were talking in like the Facebook group, and you were like, things were getting pretty tough for a while, and so it seems
I think a lot of families have had to deal with the COVID stuff over the last year and a half, and it's not something anybody expects, and you think you're ready for it, and then it hits and just turns everything upside down, especially to lose a loved one.
Now you're getting back into that groove again and getting out and doing investigating and stuff.
Trying to. I haven't really followed up on any investigations yet. I haven't even checked the BFRO incoming reports for a while. I'm going to get caught up on that. I'm still the investigator for the San Bernardino Mountains. And now that I'm down here in Riverside County as well, I could probably poke around here a bit, probably, Cleveland National Forest area if anything comes down from there. But I don't know. I'm in the area that seems to get activity about every 7 years, thinking that it's going to transitionary migratory route. And we're just not there yet. The last one was the late 90s, and it seems to be a lull here, so I'm not sure what's going on. We did get a report out of the Cajon Pass last year, at the very end of last year, like December. So it's not last year sounds so long ago, but it was really 3 or 4 months ago.
The Cajon Pass wasn't where we went, was it?
No, Cajon Pass is the 15 freeway going from the San Bernardino area, up San Bernardino, Rancho Cucamonga, up into Victorville.
Oh, okay.
The theory that the San Bernardino Mountains and the Los Angeles County Mountains, San Gabriel Mountains, are a migratory pass where they have, I don't think there's a permanent population, but I do think there has been some sightings. They may be traveling through. Ultimately, the only way to get across that is going to be the Cajon Pass. That joins the two mountains together. And you're talking about the 15 freeway, which is 4 or 5 lanes of traffic going each direction up the pass. They do split for a while, kind of like the 5 freeway does up in the Gorman area, where you have one travel lane direction going one direction, and then a few hundred yards away, you have the other lane of traffic going the other direction, separated by a green belt. And the Cajon Pass would actually be considered a brown belt because there's not much green there. But there's also the railroads that go through too. There's a couple railway possibility for them to get through on the rail tunnels or whatever. So, not a lot of activity that I've seen. Certainly nothing like they have like out in Ohio or, up north in Washington, Idaho, or even Northern California for that matter. Nothing down here in Southern California like that, but there is spotted reports here and there. So yeah.
I was going to, like you said, that makes sense about it kind of being, there's a lull. It feels like
California's been plagued by fires, a lot of fires. And if in fact there is a migratory trail going from Northern California to like the only place they could really be going is either Mexico or, towards Arizona, which if they're going to Arizona, there's much better ways than traveling all the way down along the coast and across the mountains. I don't know, but certainly if there is a migratory population that cruises through the area every few years or decade or whatever, it explains the whole gene pool question a lot of people bring up, and they're like, well, wouldn't there be inbreeding, and wouldn't they just eventually die out because they'd get so sick from inbreeding they wouldn't be able to survive? There was a lot of human tribes that were very small tribes that were nomadic across the United States, North America, South America, everywhere, 1,000 years ago, and they had a pretty small gene pool too, and look how they blew up. So
Mhm.
I don't know that, there's anything in the way of big, huge populations everywhere. So the only way to answer that gene pool question would be with the transitionary migration. That they are migrating, and every 10 years or so, and that explains a lot of sightings at that point. If that holds to be true, then that explains why there's big lulls in between, sightings in certain areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like the place that I would go to research was not too far from Ventura, and it seemed like the activity was kind of dead for a while. And the only time it seemed really active was that one time we were all. I don't think you were there. The Ventura Mountains, I think there's a lull. There's not. There's certain times of the year, or maybe every few years, it's active. So I remember I went out with Moneymaker and a couple other people that had sightings. And funny enough, the guy that we were on the expedition with had a sighting off the 5 highway in July the same year I got my thermal video in that same area too. So I think that was 2017. I can't remember, but that was a pretty active year. Well, speaking of activity out there, what did you think of the BFRO expedition we went on out there, like of the area?
The area was good. There wasn't a lot of there was a lot of people activity. There's certainly some small mountain towns up there. There's some roadways that are heavily traveled, but we've also seen a lot of sightings in areas just like that. If there's nobody there, there's nobody to see them. So the fact that it's populated, some may say, well, there's too many people there. There's too many roads. There's too much traffic. There's no way there's a squatch there. Not entirely true. Got to have people around in order to have a sighting. So that being said, there's certainly sightings that have been reported there for quite some time. And, just to that end, each area has got its own, I guess you could say, I don't know what to call it, but its own picture, like a baseball card for every area, and then you look at the back of it, it's got the stats. So
Yeah.
that particular area, it is heavily, it's not heavily populated, but it's surrounded by some of the heaviest population in Southern California. It's the area itself up in the mountains. There's some farms in the valleys. There's some small towns in the mountains. You've got lots of recreation going on there. Off-roading right at the bottom of one of the hills. There's a whole off-road park. So there's a lot of people there. So I don't think there's a solid population there, but I think it's going to be just like the San Gabriels and the San Bernardinos, where they've got a migratory population that are moving through. And of course, if they are going through the LA and the San Bernardinos, it only makes sense that they're getting there through the Ventura Mountains. So it would probably be a good idea to go through the last 50 years of sightings in the BFRO database and timeline them by area and see if we can track them. You might actually figure out there's a migratory pattern. And how valuable would that be when you're out looking for a squatch? To be able to know
in that area.
Yeah, to know that, okay, it looks like every 7 years, so we'd have some time to prepare for, with technology today, we could totally be ready with a pretty good response out there as far as people go and being able to pre-plan. Last thing you can pre-plan for is a Sasquatch sighting normally.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were able to determine some kind of a migratory schedule, we might actually have a shot.
Well, I think, didn't you say something about 7 years, give or take?
It seems like it's a little bit less than 10.
So if we're doing, let's just say for argument's sake, if we're doing 7-ish years, that means from the time that I had that sighting and the guy had that one on the 5 in the same year, I think we're about in that time frame, give or take, close to there.
Probably close to it, yeah. And we'll know if we see an uptick in sightings and reports coming in. I don't know which way they'd be going. Perhaps are they passing in transit? Are there some going north, or some are going south? Or are they all moving southbound? And then they're all heading northbound now. Like which way are they going? We wouldn't even know which area to start watching for activity until we could figure that out too.
You know what? I feel like they'd be going southbound. And I feel like October would be the year or the month that they would be traveling through. Just because I think the further north you go in the winter, it's going to be colder and more snow. And I think they want to be warm, so they're going to travel south. But who knows?
Makes sense.
I mean, that's why I still go out there as much as I can when I can. Just got to do what I got to do.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, it'd be good to have some kind of an advantage, and that's something that we certainly need to really study what's going on to be able to try and formulate some kind of an advantage. I mean, I think with technology we have now, as many people have cell phone cameras, um, just technology in general, we should be able to punch everything into a database and see if we can figure out where they're going and when.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm sure we can. I just got to figure that out. Like, get a time frame. Okay, they're going to be here this time, and so on and so forth. But like being ready with technology and being prepared, like, what do you think of the use of drones in field research nowadays? Like, do you think it's a viable tool or?
I think it's more than viable. I think it's mandatory. I think multiple drones, you need multiple angles. So if you get something, you can get it from another angle. Different forms of video capture, whether it's color, night vision, infrared, IR, ultraviolet, whatever, thermal, being able to use the different tools that are available. I think that we went through a period of time when people were simply using 35 millimeter snap cameras, and then they got video cameras that came out with Patterson Gimlin, and then later on you get people with cell phones out there catching stuff, and now we've got this really good technology of flying cameras. And so to just use a drone, to me, would be like using a cell phone in a group of 20 spread out over 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to just limit yourself like that. Multiple drone pilots, and all operating from a central location under unified direction from somebody who's got all the information about where they should be or where they're going. And not just drones. I mean, we've got proximity sensors, we've got laser beams we can shoot across the mountaintop to see if there's any movement. Vibration sensors, they use those in the border, down in the Mexico border. They've got vibration sensors in the ground that can pick up footsteps. Basically build a technology wall across the area where you think they're going and just wait. It's like a gill net, string it across the whole entire mountains in one area, the most narrow, where you think it's going to be the most concentrated in a bottleneck. And an area like that would be really good, would probably be someplace near, hang on, I'm sorry. Someplace in the area near probably the 5 freeway in Gorman. That's a very good bottleneck area. So is the 15 at Cajon Pass. There's only certain places they can go in those areas. Let's see. It needs to be an area that there's not a lot of gullies or ravines. You're talking about a narrowing of the mountains. Heaps Peak in the San Bernardino Mountains, very good example. You from the top of it, you can look down one side of the mountain, and you can look down the other side in the desert. You can see from the ocean. If you look left, you can see all the way up to, towards Barstow. If you look right, if you're looking westbound, someplace like that where you've got an actual bird's eye view. It wouldn't be a bad idea to try work with a fire tower. Fire towers are made to have a very, very good angle view over the entire mountain. And the reason that they're placed where they are is because they afford the viewer that view, an unobstructed view of the mountains. So, there's a lot of different places that you can set up wherever the mountains narrow to where it's a single slope up one side and relatively a single slope down the other side, as opposed to a real wide swath of mountains. The San Bernardinos get pretty wide when you get in the big area. The distance from Apple Valley to say Redlands to San Bernardino is pretty wide. But when you get closer to the Cajon Pass, your narrow's pretty good. And you got the freeway that you can also work with there. Unless they're doing it at 3 or 4 in the morning, they're not going to be running across the highway.
No.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
they're pretty narrow options on where they're going to be able to cross that divide right there between the San Bernardinos and the Los Angeles Mountains. And as far as Gorman goes, same thing. The grapevine's pretty long too, as far as coverage goes. But we also know about certain areas where they can cross there too, in certain green belts. So, it would take some planning, but I think that multiple drones being used with various forms of video capture, night vision, zoom lenses for the day, every month. I mean, there are strides, and just so much change, so many changes in the drone technology, even month by month. Where we were at 6 months ago, we're so far ahead now than we were 6 months ago as far as drone technology goes. Being able to add extra batteries for extended flight time, keep them up there for a couple hours. Station 15 of them across the entire spread, 100 yards apart with motion sensing and tracking. They have that now.
It's almost like not playing fair to do that, but technology is catching up quick.
At this point, it behooves us to not play fair. It behooves us to get as much advantage as we possibly can, just to be able to show the world that, you know what? Hey, they're real. Yeah, it's there. Once and for all. We've been in that situation in history before as a culture, where they say that certain animals don't exist, or, we've discovered everything there is to discover here, and then bam, they find another species in a cave, and they're like, oh, okay. Just there's so many examples of species that were rumored to exist because only a few people saw them. And then all of a sudden we've got evidence. And, the thing that bugs me is everybody says, there's no bone evidence. There's no skeletal evidence of past dead Bigfoots. So they must not exist. Well, really they also said that there's no such thing as, the giant men of old. But yeah. we have skulls.
Yeah,
there's a whole bunch of different skulls. You're gonna tell me we found every single skull that could have possibly been in the history of humanoids, of bipedal humanoid species?
It's so true
because they're still finding them.
You know what's funny? It's like people are like, "Well, how come Yeah, they never see it, so they can't be real." I'm all over the place right now, but like pandas weren't discovered until March 11th, 1869. And that's a common animal. Pandas are. And then let me see. I'm cheating here. I'm looking at Google.
It's okay. Remember what I said about every advantage we can get?
Yeah, you gotta take it when you can get it. So I'm looking up about the. Okay, so yeah, the giant squid. Guess when that was discovered? Guess when the giant squid was discovered?
Yeah, they just recently found that. But there's been stories about them ever since man was crossing the ocean. There's been stories about them, and they may have been called sea monsters because the sailors only saw the arms and the tentacles and never realized what the other part of the body that remained underwater looked like.
Yeah, but it just goes to show that even something as known now didn't it possibly exist, quote unquote, but was discovered, right, doesn't mean it's not real. And I think the other thing that Sasquatch has going for it, which also is it's kind of a difficult thing for researchers, is that they're really rare and very intelligent. More intelligent than your average animal in the forest or wilderness that you run across.
Agreed.
But I mean, like you said, we got to go out there and utilize technology to our advantage, and don't play fair when it comes to technology. You just blast an area with drones, like you're saying. 15.
That's about all you can do.
I feel like 15 drones. When you're saying 15, I'm thinking that's a little overkill, but at the same time, 15 drones is a lot, and you can see a long way with 15 drones.
You can make a very long visual surveillance area with 15 drones. And if you're using a drone and you're literally trying to spot movement from the air when you have no place to actively look, one's not going to do it. Mm-hmm. It just isn't.
No, because you're trying to cover a little. It's almost like grid searching. Well, it would be grid searching with the drone.
You can't grid search for a moving object.
Well, I mean, okay, if you have 15 drones, you have a grid, you're just going to search that grid.
I wouldn't grid search just because we could never get a big enough grid with 15 drones. You're looking at a drone, I would put it up a couple hundred feet, and with thermal, you'd probably be able to shoot about a 500-yard swath, actively back and forth looking for movement. So at 500 yards at a time, 15 drones would get you somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 yards. Maybe 7,500 yards, like that. That, times 21,000 feet, 5 miles, 20,000 feet per mile. It's a couple of miles.
Yeah.
You'd want to be able to you definitely want to be able to find an area of the mountains where you're not just covering half of it, because drones make noise. We know that most animals in nature are hypersensitive to noise and machinery type things like that. So you get this drone buzzing up there. They're going to hear it long before we see it here, before we see it, and they'll avoid the area. So if they had to skirt a line of drones, 15 drones long that were 500 yards apart, that'd be nothing for them to just keep walking until they're away from the line and then go around it. So it's got to be in a bottlenecked area, and use 30 if you have to, whatever it is. But if it's going to be a coordinated effort where, you'd obviously need some kind of financial backing to do something like this, and hire some drone pilots and have all the drones and have all of the, technology. I'm sure there's software out there can make multiple drones work together. So it would be a project, but I mean, at what point are we going to say, no, the greatest discovery of the now 21st century is not important enough to just put together 30 drones and cover a mountain range in a time. Again, we'd have to have some kind of an idea of when they were going to be there. So this would coincide directly with a timeline analysis of all sightings in the area over the last 50 years to try and determine if there's a pattern. Maybe in mid-August, every 7 years we get sightings in the San Bernardinos, and then early September we're getting sightings in Gorman. That would be making sense that they're traveling and you're able to actually see a separation on the travel time as they move through the mountains. And we'd be able to determine now at this point, okay, they're moving northbound every 7 years and then southbound 7 years later. So big, but you wouldn't be able to tell this unless you really took every single sighting, not just from the BFRO, we're talking everywhere, and try and map them out on a timeline, on a map location, to try and figure out if there's a pattern. And if there is, then we take and use it thusly with drone nets. We call it a drone net, like a gill net. It's just strung out, and anything walks through it gets caught.
I feel like that's also a viable thing to do. I feel like sitting there just scanning an area would take a long time and waste battery. I feel like
just be a waste of time.
What?
That's just, yeah, I agree. That'd be a total waste of time.
I think, and I think maybe what you're implying to, this could just be me implying for you, would be you have people on the ground doing their research, and if they get responses, you send like 30 drones over that area and scan the crap out of it.
Right.
Because I feel like it works good with one drone, but dude, if you have like a sound or response and you like send an army of drones to that area just to blast it with thermal and what have you, I think your chances of filming whatever it is are going to be higher than just one drone going after it.
Well, you have to be sensitive to the noise of it. That's why it's got to be up so high, which is a double positive, because it's up that high, reduces the amount of noise that's being heard on the ground, and it also gives you a wider view. So by using that big old long line of drones, keeping them way up high, I don't even know what the height would be. We'd have to sit there and experiment with it. How high can you go where you still get good height? How high can you go to reduce the noise and increase the viewing area, yet still maintain high resolution video on the thermal camera?
So I have a drone. I have a Mavic Air 2. The height level in which I can fly to is 400 feet. So
without a permit, that's as far as FAA goes, right?
Yeah, without a permit, like unless
I'm
you
talking
have
about permits
permission.
and everything, because I would say that this needs to be an operation that was FAA approved with the permitting process in place. We'd obviously need permits from U.S. Forest Service. We'd need permits from the county. Low airspace there's just a lot of things that would go into this in order to make it viable. Sitting at 400 feet in the air, I don't know what the thermal resolution would be at that high and how far it goes. And
anything. Well, I guess my point is because in my area, there's some areas you don't have to ask permission for FAA, and there's some areas you do. And
well, it depends on what you're doing.
Well, like as a hobbyist, then you're fine a lot of the time in certain areas. But the thing is, even at 400 feet where I live, I could barely hear it with the traffic noise. So anything like animals are hypersensitive, they'll hear it at 400 feet. So you got to go higher than that. And the problem with going higher, even with a good drone with a good range and view with good zoom, it's going to really be pixelated.
Right.
Which is, it's good that they can't hear it, but it's also bad. But if you see something, you can fly down to get it, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's exactly the plan. So you get up there long enough to get a thermal hit, and then you send in one or two drones to get in real close, the two closest, to see what it is, and get a real good resolution video. And then they have the drones that have the night sun, which will do a full blown illumination. Those new LED lights they have, they can light up a whole freaking parking lot with a drone 100 feet up.
I know, dude. They're so
It's
awesome.
pretty awesome.
And you can freak people out like pretending it's a UFO. I thought how fun that would be.
Yeah, so I mean, it really needs to be planned out, but it's useless if we don't know where and when. Now what I would say is, if you were to do something, so I'll take back one thing that I said. I said a grid search is useless for a moving object. Yes and no. It depends on the speed of the object and the area that you're gridding and how you're doing it. If you have one drone that can check, 100-foot wide swath, and you start in the center and you're going out, it's going to take you, by the time you get out, I don't know, 20 times, you're talking about 200 yards or 2,000 yards around the outer perimeter of your grid. It's going to take it forever.
Yeah.
But what if you had 15 drones in a line? Now you're going a 1,500 yard swath. You could go 1,500 yards one direction, turn left, do another 1,500 yards, then turn left, and you just scanned. I can't even do math in my head right now.
Let's just say it's going to be a lot of area.
It's a lot of square yards
Yep.
that you're getting. You're talking acres at that point. And then the next one, you're going to go out even further. Now, if you have something this wide, check doing a grid search, I wouldn't use that for a migrationary search when you're looking for migrating animals. I would say, if we have activity that day, we go there. And so one of the things that I had for a show was called Mission Bigfoot. And it was a show where me and my team responded immediately to any Sasquatch sighting. Like, we were there within 24 hours, sooner if we can get there. Like, bam, we're there. The reason why is because, and it's actually talk about it in the show intro, the moment there's a sighting, a clock starts ticking. It's ticking down to the point when the environment and Mother Nature begin to remove evidence of the sighting. Whether it's wind or rain or snow or other animals tromping over footprints, that all, as soon as there's a sighting, that clock starts. How long is it going to be until all evidence is gone? Either washed away, blown away, stepped on by other animals, whatever. So, being able to go and talk to witnesses and investigate a sighting that happened in an area 20 years ago is good to be able to gather data on the typical behavior of an animal. But to catch one, as soon as the sighting comes in, you got to be there, right away. That being said, now you're in an active area. Either you're going to find out right away that it's a hoax, or you're going to find out right away it was a misidentification, or you're going to find out right away if it's something that needs to be looked into. Now, if you have that, and then maybe another sighting comes in, you've got some good activity, that's when you deploy the grid search with the 15 drones doing a 15,000 yard, it's just huge grid search. Or you can do it where they do the closing of the noose. If it's in between these two towns, you send people on foot going one direction, coming back the other direction in between the two sighting areas, and try and close in on them with the drones also covering part of the lands. Maybe there's an area that isn't accessible by foot. So
like
steep
not accessible by
mountainsides.
foot. Like, drones could be so. I mean, you can go. There's a couple mile. You can get a couple mile ranges out of some drones.
Oh, of course.
And it'd be cool to use those to. I mean, they're also good for scouting out areas to go and hit. Even if you're not getting any activity, you can also fly it up a creek You
right?
can't necessarily walk up. There could be something there, and then
Waterfalls.
if it's if you see something on the drone that looks worthy of going to investigate, you're like, okay, I'll put in the time and effort to actually hike there and do it, versus hiking there and just spending forever not finding anything.
Yeah, I mean, just to go up to a place where there's been activity in the past. I mean, you're talking if I mean, if you're not hunting deer, you know what I mean? Deer, there's thousands and thousands of them. You can pretty much go anywhere and chill, and you're going to see a deer after a while.
Dude, yeah.
If you're hunting a squatch, and I don't mean hunting like hunting it to shoot it and kill it. I mean tracking it, chasing it, whatever. If you're looking to find one, their numbers are so small, and they're very intelligently working to avoid detection. So not only do you got to find one, you got to outsmart it and catch it on video. And you got to get good in that video that's going to prove it's not a freaking dude in a suit.
Yeah.
The video that we got sent to us from the sighting in Gorman, very good video, very believable, but it's not close enough to prove anything. And even though I'm an investigator for the BFRO, and I came pretty close to hosting a show, I'm probably the biggest skeptic there is.
I think I know the guy who was it a thermal video?
Which one? What I'm talking about?
The Gorman one, yeah.
No, this was a regular color midday sighting. Dude pulled over on the side of the freeway, side 5 freeway, because he saw it walking down the hillside.
That's the guy I was talking about. I just don't know his name. That's the one where, yeah, I've seen that.
Up there by the ranch that belongs to that older lady?
Yeah. Yep.
That video is a great video. I mean, for somebody who believes there may be a creature out there that's bipedal, covered and for possibly transitioning through the mountains, that's a great video, because you're already halfway there. You're just wanting to see something that's going to make it like, okay, maybe there is something here. For the person who thinks that every single Bigfoot is a man in a suit, they see that video and what are they going to say?
Man in a suit.
Right. So it's up to us as investigators. Look, let me tell you my stance as a Bigfoot. My general attitude about being a Bigfoot investigator. Do I think that there is an 8-foot tall, 1,000-pound creature in groups living in various forests around the United States that have been avoiding detection? Maybe. Do I want to be a part of the team that discovers it? Uh-huh. So I will work as hard as I can to find them.
Yeah.
Are they real? Maybe, maybe not. I know there's some people who've seen them face to face and were 100% undoubtedly sure on their life that it was a creature. You talk about Matt Moneymaker and his first sighting. Within feet of one, you could smell its breath. You could feel the heat coming off of its body. You could smell it. It probably spit on him.
You could see the ball drag as it was walking.
You could see the muscles in his mouth, the teeth, the fur, the muscles moving under the skin. 100%. It is a creature. It is a biological creature. Okay. It didn't happen to me. Not yet. Now, I did have a road crossing in 2009. Was it a Sasquatch? I don't know. I even told the team when I was on the show. I don't know what I saw. I saw a guy running and he was covered in fur. And the reason I called it into the BFRO was because I just saw a furry guy running across the highway. What does that mean? I just saw a silver thing flying through the air with lights on it and it disappeared. What does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, it can only be one of two things. It's either a dude in a suit or it's a Sasquatch. I'm not the professional. I wasn't back then. That's what got me into it, was my road crossing sighting. Now, I can guarantee you 100% on my life that I saw a tall bipedal creature running across the highway, cleared the guardrail, and when I stopped and looked over the side, it was a 25, 30-foot drop into a bunch of broken trees and bushes. And it looked like something had been doing it over and over again because they were all bent over. And I know that when I was there with the team, Bobo was slightly taller than the person I saw.
So it definitely wasn't out of human range.
It wasn't out of human range. But we also know that if they're biological creatures, they're going to have youngsters. There's probably smaller furry, hairy people running around that are smaller than most humans. They think it's a child in a suit. It could be a baby Sasquatch.
You know, it's funny that you say that though. Like I feel when I had that thermal video and I placed my friend when he did kind of a bad recreation of it, he almost seemed like the same size. And I feel like the whole area down south for Bigfoots are where a lot of young ones hang out. Because I think about it this way, like a lot of baby great whites are in Southern California, like Santa Monica. Then you get all the adults, like the further you get north. I feel like it's a breeding ground, not breeding ground, but I feel like it's almost like a training ground for younger generation of Bigfoots.
If you look at the Native American nomadic cultures, they did have places they stayed for a short period of time, and they erected homes, teepees, longhouses, whatever in those areas. But they would also pack it up and move when they needed to move for food reasons, for weather reasons, for whatever reasons they were doing that. But no matter where they were, the children and the women stayed in the safe area, and only the older men went out. So that could be the same thing with a Squatch. You know, they may have some ravine somewhere, some very deep ravine or a river gulch. It's very, very, very hard to get to. Lots of places are like that around the world. Even in North America, there's still places that humans rarely go because it's just way too freaking hard to get there. It's even hard to get there in a helicopter because there's such steep edges, steep ridges on both sides. A lot of those narrow ravines like that, gullies, gulches, whatever you want to call them, also have very high wind currents. You get convection that rolls through those canyons. The cold air stays down in the canyons, the hot air is above it, and there's a lot of turbulence right there where they meet. So that could be deterrent to getting anybody in using airplanes or helicopters. So unless somebody's going to go in there, rappel down the hillsides into the bottom of the gully, now you got to find them because they're literally doing everything they can to avoid detection.
Exactly.
You could be so many, I would say 80 to 90% of Bigfoot sightings when they are visual sightings. Those Sasquatches were probably 5 to 10 feet away from people and they didn't even know it.
Dude, yeah.
So to think that somebody can just go down into a giant river valley with super steep gulch edges and just go in and walk through and find a Squatch, you might walk 5 feet away from one. You think they don't know how to duck? My kid likes to hide behind the door and I walk in the house. I'm 2 feet away from him. I don't even know he's there. And he scares me once I walk in the door. You think that the greatest hide and seek champion in the world, we've all seen the meme, you think that guy's not going to be able to hide from you in a forest 4 or 5 feet away in a body that is made to not be seen with all the dark fur? That is natural. We create ghillie suits to try and become invisible in the forest. They have one built in.
Dude, it's so true.
It's so much more difficult than people are like, well, then why do we have any pictures? I don't know. When was the last time that you went in down to the dirty, deep, dark, and wicked ravine? I mean, they're not hitchhiking. They aren't taking the bus to get around. They're hiding.
It's like, it's funny how people are like, yeah, they say like, well, why don't you have pictures of them, huh? And like you said, it's not easy. I mean, you go out and, and I think a lot of people who say that don't really go out in the forest or the woods or nature.
Next time you're talking to somebody who says, why are all the pictures blurry? Okay? And you're face to face with them. If you're outside, point at a bird and say, quick, take one picture of that bird as it's flying by. You know it's going to be a blob bird.
Nothing's going to be in focus.
Hurry, get the picture. They're going to be shaking as they're trying to open their camera, and the bird's going to be gone. Yeah. They think that some dude is going to be like with a tripod and a high definition 4K camera chilling in the forest, already all set up on a tripod, zoomed. And look, there's a Sasquatch 200 feet away right there. Click. That doesn't even happen with wildlife photographers.
So
I would like to talk. I think that'd be a great interview. I think that you should do a show just on the blob squatch photos and videos. And I think you should talk to a professional wildlife photographer and ask them how many pictures they throw away versus how many they actually get.
They probably throw away hundreds of thousands of photos.
I'm sure, because that one bird came into view for a second and they pulled their camera out and they tried to take it and they had the wrong setting and they never focused. Like, dang it.
Like the shutter was left open too long, or what? The ISO wasn't right.
Let me talk to a wildlife photographer and have him explain to those people who say, well, why aren't there any pictures? Like the only type of photos that are long range photos that come in really clear enough to be able to identify facial structure, muscle structure, whether it's a suit or not. The only type of photographs that are ever taken that good, that far away are photographs where they were staged, which is why Matt's so quick when he's, and I mentioned Matt Moneymaker because Matt has got a lot of experience dealing with people's reports. He, for decades, has been simply just going out and looking at reports. He knows that when you have a super high definition photograph of an animal, a moving animal from far away, anybody who knows how to use a camera that can shoot that far knows how long it takes to get that camera set up to shoot like that, to get a clear shot, talking focus, aperture, lighting, all that. It's almost impossible to do it on the spur of the moment for a sighting that lasts 3 or 4 seconds because it happened to walk between 2 trees.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to get your camera up in the air, get it even in the right direction and take a picture, it's going to be blurry, even if it's got autofocus, cell phones, whatever. It's going to be blurry because it stands a chance of focus. And you're probably shaking like a leaf. We're people, we're humans. Even the most confident and bravest of all people, when you see an 8-foot freaking hairy dude walking through a forest, you're going to get the shakes for a second. You're going to get a burst of adrenaline. I don't care who you are. Jason Statham himself would get an adrenaline rush. He'd be like, something in the force, not on me. Okay? Like, seriously, dude. Fast enough. Like, it just wouldn't happen.
Wait, can you say that? Can you say there's something on the hill in Jason Statham?
Oh. There's something on the hill.
Jeez.
I'm going to go kick its ass.
Oh, not even going to try to attempt it.
You say, there's something on the hill. Know what I mean?
You got to say it like a little deeper, more of something on the hill. I don't know, something like that.
Someone on the hill. Know what I mean? There's a comedian that talks about Jason Statham. He takes a 10-syllable sentence and turns it into 3 or 2. Instead of him saying, do you know what I mean? He says, know what I mean? Anyways, so the point is, as far as it goes with migratory, and I'm going to wrap it up because I got to go. But as far as it goes with the migration, the transitory, transitionary, they're just constantly moving. It would require a mapping with timeline of the last 50 years. I'm not talking about 10 or 20. I'm talking about hundreds of sightings so we can get a true trend. Number 1. Number 2, once you figure out when they're going to be passing through, you can't use 1 drone and 4 people. You need to have you need to have an army, almost a search party. Look at when search and rescue is looking for a missing hiker. They got 4 people in a drone. They've got people in teams, dozens and dozens of teams, sometimes 100 people, 200 people working together under one unified command. Radios, we know what we're doing. When somebody's mapping, they got aircraft involved. That's what it's going to take to find one. If you even know where to go to look for it, maybe the timeline mapping will get you some kind of an idea of when to be there.
Yep. Yeah, it will.
And then you have to have a response team. What are you going to do? What are you actually going to do? Like, that's the magic question. You've got the mountain monster dudes. They're going to be like, well, I'm going to shoot it. And then you got some other people like, well, as long as I get a good wood knock back, I'm good, I believe. Then you got the people that say they'll trank it and cage it. Okay, freaking Einstein. Let's say you're walking through the park with your mom and somebody tranks her and cages her and takes her off in a truck. What's that going to do to you? I mean, at that point, we're talking about a serious ethical issue. In the same second that you just proved it existed and you tranquilized it and put it in a cage in a truck and drove it, someplace gets studied. What if there was a kid? Now let's talk about the ethical issue. Okay, now they're real. You just stranded a baby in the forest. Okay, and then finally,
Jesus.
Like obviously nobody wants to kill it. I think it should be a crime. I honestly, you hear about these towns that are passing ordinances that it's illegal to kill a Sasquatch, and everybody laughs at them. But just think for a moment. Giant squids, somebody's going to kill it to prove it exists. How jacked up is that in the real world?
It's pretty jacked up. Like, some people might not think you exist, Raymond, and they want to kill you to prove it.
Yeah, they're looking for a fat round dude. But
I swear to God, I've seen him.
I think that if we use technology to digitally capture it, to be able to capture the serious close-ups of walking, and I'm talking like zoom camera, drones 40, 50 feet away, out of reach, and it's zooming in on its mouth. You can see its tongue moving, you see its lips moving, you see it breathing. If it's cold outside, you see a hot air coming out of its nostrils and not out of its neck from a guy in a suit. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to prove it once and for all that it was there. And then, of course, you're going to have, it could be the best pictures anywhere, and people are going to say it's Photoshop. What's it actually going to take for the world to believe it exists? Sadly, usually it takes a body. They had to find a dead giant squid to prove it exists. Any pictures they had of it, they said, oh, how do you know? You got forced perspective. How do you know that it's actually not 2 feet away from the camera or 2 inches away from the camera? Unfortunately, it took a body washing up on a beach to go, oh my God, what is this? It's a giant squid.
Or you either need that, or you need a video of it, like making out and doing the dirty. You can't fake that.
Joe Rogan, if you're listening to this, I'd like you to address his last comment, please. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I'd crap my pants if Joe Rogan listened to this podcast. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah. Anyways, that's what I think about that, and that's about it, bud. So
that's awesome. Well, Raymond, thanks for coming on, man. It's been a treat. It's always good to hang out. Last time I hung out with you was the BFRO expedition, so hopefully we'll get to do it again. But until next time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, dude, it's going to be so much fun. Until next time with the Bluff Creek Project Podcast.